Dissident Science, and yes, I've been working on my video for over a month. I apologize, I've been really busy. Actually, this video turns out to be over 20 minutes long, but I'm actually here today to talk about a couple things. We also have a new system we've been working with our CMPS, that is the Chappelle Natural Philosophy Society. That's a organization of critical thinkers around the world that's been around for a number of decades. And first of all, I want to thank all the subscribers that have subscribed to my channel over the last month or so. And like I said, I apologize. I am working a lot on Editor. I got a new computer. I got a new editing suite. I'm using Adobe Premiere. And I've just been real busy. But yes, I'm working on it, and it's going to be pretty amazing. But also, I wanted to try out this new system because I used to do Friday nights where I had go on live, and I would take questions from you. In fact, if you are so inclined, I have. You can come on and say hello, Richard Jesh. Hello. I'm broadcasting simultaneously to YouTube on the CMPS and, of course, my Dissident Science channel, which has over 2,300 subscribers. In fact, I was below 2,000 subscribers when I started working on this last video. But welcome everybody and their comments. And I'm here really to talk about a couple things and see if this works out. If people are interested in asking me questions, you can either ask through the chat in YouTube, or you can actually, and I'm going to put that up right now, you can actually come into my waiting room, and if you have earbuds like I have, or earphones if you have a computer, and you have a cell phone, either Android or a Apple iPhone, you can, with your iPhone or Android phone, actually discuss with me. I have a waiting room of up to 10 people, and I can put those live on the air. But before we start, and as people are coming on, I'd like to talk a little bit about some news. One that's kind of quite sad, actually, and that is Ron Hatch. For those of you who don't know, he was a member of our society, and he was also a Lifetime Achievement Award winner. I think it was back in 2017 at the University of Maryland. But his lifetime work was in GPS, and of course, of those of you who know GPS and as well as relativity, there's a lot of people who are critical thinkers who know that, in fact, GPS doesn't use relativity, even though we say a lot about that. That's going to be one of the things in my next video you're going to see. I think you're going to really enjoy that video. My videos are edited. This, of course, is live and unscripted. Please say hello if you want to. And anyways, I really appreciate everybody coming here. But again, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ron Hatch. This is his memorial. He was 80 years old. He lived in Southern California. And actually, he was the first investor in my film, Einstein Wrong. If you don't know about Einstein Wrong, let me put it up here on the banner. I do have a documentary film called Einstein Wrong. I worked about 8 years on it. And there's the URL if you want to go see it. I think it's like $3 to rent online, or $10. You can watch it as many times as you want. But the first investor for that documentary film was, in fact, Ron Hatch. And he literally gave me the money to buy. Actually, it's back there. It's sort of a dinosaur because I bought it back in I think, the December of 2004. And high-def cameras at that time were, I think, $35,000. So I bought a camera that was, at the time, a really great digital camera, but it wasn't even widescreen. But of course, things have changed. But if it wasn't for him and his belief in my vision of doing the Einstein Wrong film, I would not have started. And of course, he is actually one of the people in the film and talks about GPS and how it actually shows flaws in relativity. So that's something that, I really want to thank Ron and his family for really doing this amazing work all his life. He was actually quite, let me get that banner off for you. Again, I'm learning this new system. He was had 13 children, and actually his his wife. He was taking care of his wife many times when I was talking to him. Even in 2017, I was talking to him. He was taking care of his um, uh, wife Nancy, and I think is still alive, but she was not doing too well. So he was taking care of her, but all of a sudden he was gone, and you can see all of these are his 13 children. And he has 14 grandchildren. And the services were in Long Beach, California, where I lived for about over 20 years. And there are people who have put their condolences here, and many of the people, of course, are from GPS. He was a GPS scientist, and he started his own company, which was bought out by Deere tractors, who drive tractors along fields and use GPS. And he made some money from that. Like, I'm not going to say he was a millionaire, but he made some money from that. And of course, he then actually made enough money that he could basically retire. But he said to me when I was interviewing him for the film, a part of it's going to be in my next video. So those who are subscribers, I want to thank you for new subscribing again to my channel, and that video will be coming up. But he when I talked with him numerous times, he had said that they offered him a salary he could not refuse. So he was at least had reaped the rewards of the GPS. But he says all the time, he said all the time that, of course, GPS showed flaws in relativity, including possibly having the calculations of C plus V and C minus V, which he was in correspondence with NASA about, talking about he thought that the 56, can't remember, picosecond differences they were finding and couldn't figure out why were probably because the speed of the satellite had to be added to the speed of light. Now, of course, that totally violates special relativity. But he wrote his own book on how relativity had problems, and GPS kind of showed those. He was actually a Lorentz person. Most people who don't know, Lorentz was a mathematician who talked about the effect of movement and, in this case, light and waves. And he was a Lorenzist. And he actually toyed with the idea of light being waves and the universe actually being in a lattice system. So he was quite a dissident, and he had over 30 patents. You can see here. He was always getting awards. He was one of the most respected people in GPS, and you can see a lot of people here talking about it. Also, he was a religious man, and he had a big family, but he also had many people who, like myself, were dissidents, people who were critical thinkers who said, there can be there's some real problems with relativity, and he was not afraid of that. In fact, he wrote papers even in GPS journals, but he said they were basically they were told about he they were told about he was ignored. That's in the documentary film. If you do go online, see that he talks about how they basically ignored him. But you can see he also traveled around the world talking about GPS. And also, I think he did travel around the world for the dissident work he did. There's a lot of people here in our organization that are very sad. Emails are going around, people who are basically, who knew him or working with him. In fact, many of them were talking to him just the week before he died, and he was working on some new things that he was working on with papers with some people. So, but thank you very much. I see Darkness Falls, Axe Man are here. Appreciate you here. You guys are already discussing some things. Robert Jess, I don't know if you're still here too. But again, if you want to participate, if you actually want to come on live with me and talk to me and have any type of discussion, you can. Again, I am basically doing this for the first time unannounced because I want to sort of get used to the system, make sure this is all working well. But this is a great system. It's actually the system we use for the CMPS. So every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, I'll give you the URL. You can go to this address, and we have a weekly discussion, science chat that we've been doing with dissidents and critical thinkers every Saturday, and it's at 10 a.m. And you can get to it by just going to youtube.naturalphilosophy.org. You can also go to just naturalphilosophy.org regardless. And this system is the new system then that's available. So again, if you're interested in sorry about that. I'm pushing the buttons here. Coming and discussing anything with me live, say hello. I see Axeman is there. I would be, happy to engage in a discussion. That's what this is, a little different from my videos that now take weeks upon. Man, I'll tell you, editing video, even though I made an entire film, spent 8 years doing that. It's not easy to put these together, but you do want to try it out. You just go to that URL on your phone or on your computer. Make sure, I don't want to get any feedback, so you got to make sure you have, in fact, earphones like these that I have on here, and those earphones will allow us to communicate without having, back feed. So, I have it on the wrong one. In fact, I need to set that up. So let me make sure my settings are correct, because I don't have that. I've got the mic right, but I need to, nope, not that. Sorry about that. Oops, there we go. I've got this on here, yeah. Boy, here I go. Don't even have the speakers correctly for me here. All righty. But you can see we need to do that right, and I'm going to see which one comes out of here. All right. I'm going to keep working on that. I apologize again. This is off the cuff, and if you just joined us, you can ask some questions. Let me just get these settings right. I'm going to get these things output. Here we go. 5. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Well, let's see if this works. The mic. Yep. All right. I got it now. All righty. So I'm ready. So if you want to come in, again, you can come to live.dissident. And let me take a look at any of the comments here and see. I think you guys are discussing amongst yourself here. But I do have some other things I do want to talk about. Again, if you have a specific question, I'm sort of looking at it, but it looks like a general discussion right now between a couple people. Sapphire project, I do see somebody mention. I can also talk about that. But again, if you wanted to come in and discuss, live.dissidentscience.com. And I want to show you some other things in the news that I think that are real important. By the way, I do want to show you if Ron Hatch, if you want to know more about Ron Hatch, where you can go. Let me just take a look at this, get this here. There we go. So if you go into YouTube, this is the YouTube channel for my YouTube channel view of things. If you look up Ron Hatch and GPS, you're going to see, for instance, his John Chappelle Memorial talk. In this case is 2016, and he received the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016. He was also in some other things, but that's a good one to look at. So you can get to that. But if you go to this website here, you can in fact see this. I'm not going to play it for you at all, but you can say relativity in the light of GPS, and this is a talk. This was on July 26, 2016. You can see there, and this was at the University of Maryland. I can just go forward a little bit and you can see him talking. So if that's something you want to look at, there we have some other there are some other talks of his that we have, which are quite nice. And of course, like I said, he is in our movie, and he will be coming up into our. He will be on my next video. So, anyways, again, rest in peace, Ron Hatch. Thank you for everything you did. Um, someone says, let's see, do you have an email? I have things you absolutely see. Proof Einstein was wrong, Tesla was right. Let me get myself back here. Absolutely, send me, the email's pretty simple. I'll give you my email. I have no problems with giving that out. Pretty easy. I have actually a 1,000 emails that come to me, basically, but I'll give you this one that's easy to remember from my dissident science one. So there it is, David at dissidentscience.com. So you can send me something. I absolutely take a look at these kinds of things, and basically, if it's interesting, I will absolutely engage on it. And also, if you want to discuss, there's also our Saturday mornings on CMPS that you can actually discuss things live. And you can discuss with me right now. Again, if you so would like to do, I'll take on anything, basically, as long as people are, not just smearing and talking about it, but actually want to talk and have questions, have discussions. I'll give you my honest opinion about it. I've been hanging around these dissident scientists and critical thinkers since the early 1990s. So I'm going to be 60 very soon. Let me show you something which I want to discuss. Again, if there's nobody here who's brave enough to come online with me and talk, you're always welcome. That is a running invitation right now. Let me take a look at something I think that's really important. And one of the reasons I'm looking to do these Friday night chats is to talk about things that are in the news. And let's take a look at one of these. And that is the Nobel Prize in Physics 2019 winners made significant cosmological discoveries. Award goes to a trio of scientists giving us a new understanding of the universe. Let's read this here. The Nobel Prize in Physics for 2019 was awarded to 3 scientists on Tuesday for groundbreaking work on the evolution of the universe and the Earth's place in it. Their discoveries have forever transformed our ideas about the cosmos and help answer fundamental questions about existence, says the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, who actually I said in a tweet, or I've sent in, I'm not sure I said in a tweet, but I did say it on Facebook page. You can see me a lot of times on Einstein, Albert Einstein's Facebook page, because they do a lot of this kind of announcement. And it turns out that I said to people, I said, look, we know, in fact, in 1994, 95, 93, 94, 95, they gave a Nobel Prize for the neutrino. Dr. Riccardo Carosani, a physicist from Argentina, who was my mentor, he actually showed how the neutrino was invented to save special relativity, and it's not needed. And he found the mistake in special relativity mathematically. There's a calculation problem, and when he removed the extra frame, it turns out that the equations turn out not to be relativistic but Newtonian, and that he actually can describe nucleus collisions and many other types of interactions in the particle accelerators without the neutrino. You don't need it. So in the world of science and theories, if you find a problem and say that special relativity in this case is wrong because it says there are more than one inertial frame, when in fact there's only one three-dimensional space, that when you then get these new equations, which are no longer relativistic, don't blow up at infinity or zero, and then you have the ability to describe particle-particle nucleus interactions, for example. You can go to Autodynamics. I'll show you that link. And he showed, in fact, that the neutrino was suggested by Pauli, was named by Fermi, I believe. and said that the reason it even exists at all is because to save special relativity, and it's not needed. So if you get Nobel Prizes in things that don't exist, like the Higgs boson, many people read The Higgs Fake by Dr. Alexander Unsker, a friend of mine, who is an incredible guy. There's a doctor in physics in Germany who's fighting the good fight. We have the neutrino. We have dark matter. This is also we're going to talk about here. So there's a lot of things that Nobel Prizes are being awarded to that are wrong, and there's only a very small fraction of physicists around the world who are actually into theoretical physics, and 99% of them don't buy a lot of this mumbo jumbo. Anyways, it's just a very small group of people who are theoretical physicists who look into this and do this and play the Nobel Prize game. So the Nobel Prize, as they say, of course, questions about existence. Said the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. Of course, that's who give the Nobel Prizes. That's what they say. I don't know why people necessarily in today and age think that's the end all, do all, know all organization. So half the award went to James People, a physicist from Princeton University. Oh, Princeton, that's where Einstein was. For developing a theoretical framework that traces the history of the universe from the Big Bang to present day. Now, if anybody knows about dissidents works today, you know that we dissidents almost a vast majority no longer subscribe to the Big Bang. The Big Bang has so many just philosophical and theoretical problems. Yet we continue to push that in because the Big Bang is so invested in by the big science, big physics, big cosmology that we, in fact, have a real hard time, publicly saying that it's not true. So that's one of the things we're not afraid of. We have many reasons why the Big Bang is not viable and not a viable problem. I mean, the biggest here's a couple things. If you're a lay person and you're not really into physics and cosmology a lot, here's a way for you to understand it. So let's say you have just regular high school physics or maybe college physics or science. You didn't study physics. You're not really looking into it. Here's a way to understand this. Why do we see and why have we read about and why are we taught about the life cycles of stars, life cycles of solar systems? Oh, here's a solar system being, this is how it dies, this is how it's born. If it's the case that we're seeing life cycles, why do we have a Big Bang that's supposedly going in one direction? Meaning you sort of build everything and go off and then it's done and whatever. They don't know what would happen after that. They don't know why it would start. Why would all the mass of the universe be here? What's around it? They said, well, space and time itself was. It's just, if you really start looking at the fundamentals of the Big Bang, then you really start to go crazy. And then, of course, then you have the secondary problem, which I also did a video. You should take a look at that video. I'll show it to you. Just look up dissident science, dark matter. And that is dark matter, because if you read this, it says half the award went to James People, a physicist from Princeton University, for developing a theoretical framework that traces the history of the universe from the Big Bang to present day. His contributions to the Big Bang model and other works led to insights that just 5% of the universe is known matter, everything from stars to plants to humans, and the remaining 95 is unknown dark matter and dark energy. Now, this is a red flag. If you were even to look at this as a system, just look at us as a system, that you would say to yourself, okay, dark matter, dark energy, why is it dark? Well, we don't know what's going on. Is it the case that we are wrong in our theories and that dark matter and dark energy don't exist? Or is that just a signal that our theories, in fact, have a problem? So we name something that here's our theories, we're going to cling to them, right or wrong, or the way we're applying these things. And therefore, we're using our current theories. And because of what we're seeing in the universe. In this case, the stars on the edge of galaxies are moving at a velocity that they shouldn't be. The only way they could be moving correctly is if there was something like dark matter or dark energy. Now, of course, that's somewhat crazy if you think about it just as a system. And also, oh, here's somebody who says something. This is the darkness falls. Dark matter is ether. Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to get back here to away from that. This whole idea, here's a couple things that are going on with the statement, the darkness falls, when you say this thing, dark matter is ether. There's two very important concepts as we critical thinkers who are thinking about this all the time. First of all is the whole thing of dark matter itself. Dark matter, I'm going to go to a video, and while I'm talking here, I made a video, just again, type in dissident science, dark matter. And dark matter was postulated because of, and here's the video, it's called Second Galaxy Without Dark Matter, Newton Explains. And that's what I have here. And I will share that screen right here for you guys. And Chrome tab, there we go. And of course it's got skip ads. Sorry about that. And this is my video on this. And if I go forward here, here's the problem with dark matter. This, I'm going to summarize this video I made. And this is our galaxies that they say don't have dark matter. And the answer is ridiculously simple. And a lot of people have accused me of saying that if it's so, it can't be that simple because they would have thought of it. No, that's not true at all. And here's the reason. If you look at this galaxy, it's just like a sphere. It's almost a perfect sphere, that light you see there. And what that means is that the predicted speeds of the stars are going to be predicted by Newton's gravity as correct. Why? Because it's uniform all across. Now, if you go and you take a look at, if you look at this one, here, if you see above is a sphere, and the predicted speed matches. That's in galaxies that are spherical. That is because, why? Because we are saying that the gravitational field of a galaxy is a sphere, and so when it is a real sphere, it matches, of course, the velocity. But most galaxies are not spheres. They're sort of like these they're like pancakes with a little blob in the middle. Now that is not, and not only that, it has arms. So if you take a look at that, you have the arms, you can see that the speed of our stars in a galaxy actually follow the spaces, the arms and the spaces of the galaxy. Now, if you use Newtonian calculations for that, and here I'll give you this. This is a Cameron Ribisol, and basically he has a paper that you can read about. If you go to this video, I have a link to it. And he calculates using Newton. He calculates knowing that the gravitational field is not uniform. And if you think it is, send a probe right toward the center of the galaxy. Is it going to go in a straight line? Absolutely not. Because if there's more stars in a place, there's more of a tug of gravity. So it is a very non-spherical, very irregular gravitational field. And then when you try to at least make the arms of the galaxy like you see Ribisol doing it here, then he even splits them off, makes them into small pieces. You notice he's got these A, B, and C along the edges of the galaxy. And that he ends up calculating, he says, guess what? The speed of those stars is predicted by Newton. Now, if it's predicted by Newton, that means what's happening is that the reason dark matter was postulated was because of the edge of the galaxy, the speed of the stars. Of course, once when they treat the galaxy instead of as like they treat the galaxy below as a spherical gravitational field, and then of course the predicted speeds of the stars don't match correctly, then that's why they postulated dark matter. And of course, once they postulated dark matter, they started using it everywhere because they just, oh, here's dark matter everywhere. And so the answer to the question of dark matter is that the origin of it was the misapplication of Newtonian physics on a non-spherical gravitational field. And that when you do actually apply Newton's gravity to the irregular gravitational field, that our calculations show, in fact, they match Newton. No dark matter. Now, what happens is like the neutrino, people in physics hijack it. Oh, that doesn't matter. It's like, what do you mean it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. That's the origin of it. That's the origin of it. So that's the first part of this, that we don't need dark matter. In fact, one of the things dissonant scientists say, the moment you put dark or mysterious or unknown, it's because we don't know what's going on. And instead, what we do, instead of clinging to our, what we do is we cling to our current theory, say it's impossible that we're doing it wrong, or in this case, applying it wrong. And then, therefore, what we do is then say, okay, we know that our theory is fine. Something else is going on. There's something to discover. And of course, if you're in theoretical physics, how do you get a Nobel Prize? You have to discover it, something. And that's, of course, why the Nobel Prize was given to somebody who said that there's dark matter. Now, the second part of this darkness falls is that you have dark matter is ether. Now, this is the second problem. That's actually both of these things. Well, I don't know if dark matter is, but at least ether is in my next video I'm editing right now. And that is people who are with ether. Here's what happens with etherists. Etherists say light is something and it's real. It hurt, sunlight hits, we get energy from the sun. It can literally burn us. So obviously there's a force. So there must be something there. It's got to have a physicality. I agree 100%. What the problem is that we also say that because we need physicality, many people just say it has to be ether because light is a wave. Therefore, that's the only way it can be represented. That's not true. There are two other ways to do it. So what happens is people assume ether is the only explanation because it's a wave. That's the only thing. No, it can be like our particle model, my father and I, it's all digital. Waves are waves of particles that move and travel together. That's a perfectly good. In fact, it has a lot less problems than ether. But I'm not saying it's right or wrong. These are all theories. They're all wrong. They're just less wrong than others. The particle model, in my opinion, is less wrong than the ether model. Then there's also the lattice model. So the moment people are saying, people just assume the only a way to describe everything we see, which is light, is through ether, which is the bouncing of, it's like air and then waves through the air. So the particles only move back and forth a little bit and they hit each other and through kinetic energy transmit waves. It's not the only thing. There's two other very viable answers to that. So when people say dark matter is ether, they're clinging to two things. Number one, you're clinging to the idea that ether is the only answer to the physicality of light. It's not. Sorry. You can say what you want. You can disagree. That's totally cool. But that's the truth. And then what happens is, I want to show people that ether exists, so I'm going to attach it to dark matter. So you're, number one, saying it's the only thing, and I'm going to cling to it. Number two, you're also saying that, I want it to be true, so true that I'm going to say it's dark matter with that, and throw out the idea, throw out this explanation of this video right there. Whoops, I always point there. There it is. This video right here, which I made, which you can go watch, which explains to everybody dark matter is not needed. This is where dark matter came from. And of course, again, what mainstream science says, okay, Dave, well, this may be right, but dark matter is still needed for the acceleration of the universe. Well, it's not if you don't think the Big Bang is correct. Every time we get a bigger telescope, what do we see? Galaxies that are way too well formed further away. At the beginning of the 20th century, the universe was, hundreds of thousands of years old, not even a million. Then we got bigger telescopes. Then it became 1 million years old. Then it became tens of millions of years old. Then it became billion years old. Why? Did our theories change? No. Did what we say change? No. So what happened is every time we get a bet, we can see further along, the universe gets bigger, and then we go, oh my gosh, it's 13.7 billion. That's 13. It was 10 billion. It was 8 billion, whatever. So number one, to say that you need dark matter because the universe is expanding now exponentially. Well, it isn't. If you say that light, why we see redshift, is a different reason for than the movement. Halton Arp, read Halton Arp, guy kicked out of the astronomer. He was astronomer. He was kicked off. I have one. Look up Seeing Red, Dissident Science. That's another one. So this whole thing about dark matter's ether is clinging to ether and saying that's the only answer. It's not. You can say that's one, and please, you can say I believe that's the answer. Of course, then you have to answer all the problems with ether, which people just tend to ignore. The other one is dark matter. So what it is, I've got a physicality. I'm repeating myself, but I'm just summarizing. The physicality has to be there. So it's ether. It's the only thing it can be. We talked about it. We've been looking for 400 years. It was right. No, there's other ones now. And in my offense, even better. And then, that explains dark matter. So hey, you guys in the mainstream, they're gonna accept ether. That's what this statement means. Dark matter is ether. That's what it means implicitly. Okay. Axeman is here. Do you have? Let me see. Do you have I see him in here in the waiting room. If you, again, want to be in the waiting room and get on live with me and talk with me, I'm happy to talk with you. You can come through this live.dissonantscience.com. Let me take a look at any comments here that I see. I don't know what great answer from who. See, Eric Dock worked on and proved that speed of light is the rate of induction. Light is an attribute. Ether is everywhere. Yeah, I mean, if you're an etherist, ether's every gravity is just a polarization of ether. That's another thing about etherists. If you are an etherist, let me say this. I'm not sure I did a video on this or not. If I didn't, I should. But the video would be about ether being that ether is a light-specific solution. And then people try to fit gravity into it. For those who are not married to ether, okay, I know V darkness falls, you believe that, that's fine. I absolutely respect you. And I will say to everybody here that ether could be right. But in my opinion, there are better, and I think there's at least one better model out there. But anyways, if you are an etherist, ether exists because of one thing. During the luminiferous ether during Newton's time, hundreds of years ago, what was going on there was that people were saying, light looks like a wave, so then we need to sort of, how do we do that? Well, it's in a medium. But that wasn't to solve gravity. Now, what happens is, what people want to do is sort of what I say, the theory, like the cockroach that ate Cincinnati. The idea is ether's going to solve everything. So light is a wave, so it's got to be ether. Again, that's not true. It's one way. It could be. Second is, if it's ether, then everything can be explained from that, including gravity. So again, I will say it again, those people who aren't etherists will understand this. People who are etherists are going to close their ears perhaps and say, I'm not going to listen. That's all right. It's your prerogative. But basically what etherists are doing are saying, we are solving one problem, light. This is not a gravitational. By the way, I think I can make it work with gravity. In our group, the CMPS, the majority of people are etherists, and the people, does it mean it's right? No, because a majority does not make something right. We know that. But what they all are doing is, how can they do gravity? So what they do is they ignore the problems of ether, like how lasers work. Lasers are really focused. How can you have focused if it's in the ether? It should be spreading out. Oh, they can't talk about that. Oh, what about transverse wave? Don't know about that. Oh, how about, or they say they do, but when you look at how they say that they're showing transverse waves, they're not. Transverse waves are different. Waves for ether would be going like this. Transverse waves would be going like this. The ether would be going like this in a different direction, which kinetic energy can't do. People like Glenn Borkert, who are etherists, know this is a problem, have been trying to solve it for 20 years and hasn't. Other people who are etherists in our group, just like they just throw that out. You can't do that. So if you're an etherist and you're not answering those problems, you're in trouble. If you answer them, great. All right. So the whole thing is ether is a light biased theory. It's a light biased theory. And then your people are trying to fit into that gravity. And then they spend all their time doing it and they have elaborate explanations. I'm going, wait a minute, did you solve the laser problem? Oh, that's not important. Did you solve the transverse waves problem? Yeah. Again, my video coming up this next week, I'm not going to be really happy. People aren't going to be really happy about it. But anyways, so let's see if anywhere. World Science Festival has a couple of hot chicks talking about dark matter. Yeah, well, if you look at that, let's see, Halton Arp. That's very true. I'm not going to put that one up. It's a little bit sexist, yes, but regardless, it's a big media game. It's eyeballs. If you write something that Einstein's right, people will read it. Because they want to worship. People want an Einstein because people want to know that there are special human beings that have this knowledge that, because life is very hard. When you get to be an adult, it's messy. We don't have answers to almost anything. We want to think that we have these super people that come along that are geniuses, which is, in my opinion, a myth. And we want to worship them and say they have answers to our questions. And so, it's an all eyeballs game. So if they're talking about dark matter and it's all exotic and crazy, but again, it's a very small amount. See, our my good series about it. Okay. Yes, this is a very good one. Duplicat, I appreciate this. Halton Arp made a good video series about intrinsic redshift and his battle with conformist astronomers, Cosmology Quest. I know I talked, actually, when I was making my documentary, I got to talk with Randall Myers, who is an American composer living in Italy, making a damn good living, excuse my language. He was telling me how he bought this dome from someplace and was putting on his villa, but he made this a documentary, which you can watch all online. I think it's in 2004. I talked with him again extensively on the phone way back, over 10 years ago. And he says, if you want to go to sleep, watch this. If you're not into this, if you are into it, it is a fantastic film, at least of the people he was talking with and that kind of thing. Does Electric Universe solve all that? I'm not sure what, I got to sort of follow this. Let's see. Have you seen Tesla plasma ball being spun at from the plasma tendrils align themselves to create magnetic fields inside the globe? Yes, I have. Again, Axeman, I'm going to try here. Again, this is live. I see you there. I don't know. Do you have? Let's see here. Are you there, Mr. Axeman?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can actually. I can't see you, but that's okay, and we're not getting a feedback. Yeah. So
I want to preserve my anonymity. I don't.
That's okay.
Face online.
You're not as stupid as me, who actually put my face out and say things.
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to thank you for having the courage to put yourself out there like this, especially if you've worked in institutions, you've got a reputation and a career to protect. People that go outside the system tend to get persecuted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I work in a group. My actual area is language and computers, and I work in artificial intelligence area. But one of the things is, when I was getting the current job I got, which is in a really good research group, my boss, after I got hired and started working for him, he actually said, do you want me to tell you the story how you almost didn't get the job because of your film Einstein Wrong? And I thought, you know what I told him? I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But the truth of the matter is, I think if you look at it, the reason I started this channel is I saw some people politically who I have a certain political bent. I have many friends who are completely opposite. I'm not here to talk about politics. In fact, science should never have that in it. But anyways, I saw them put their, put their voices out there, and I knew for a fact, just from my work for so many years, that the general public and people who like science are skeptic of all these things they're reading. I mean, when people pick up the papers and read about multiverses and this whole thing of history eraser things, where if I look at a photon with a telescope, and you look at it with your binoculars, it's going to go a different way around the sun 10 billion years ago, even though we didn't even exist. I really think that the majority of people out there who really love science aren't buying this mumbo jumbo. The way I sort of put it is, the average person who really likes science, again, like science, says, they read these articles and they go, "Wake me up when you've got something real." They really want to know what is light, what is gravity, because when they hear space time, I think the average person gets the idea it's not real. So, I mean, my whole premise of this channel is to really give a voice to what I think is the silent majority. Most people don't want to say that. I know a friend that you're talking about, putting your neck out there. There's a friend of mine. I lived in Brazil 3 years. So I know Brazilian scientists as well. This one guy was an engineer. He was engineering, teaching things about physics, and he required his students, his grad students, to say, if you're going to investigate the Big Bang, you will not get a passing grade unless you give arguments for and against. Well, I was wanting to get his ideas and his techniques he was using in the university in Rio, across from Rio de Janeiro, the Bay in Rio de Janeiro. So I was on a phone call one day. He says, I can no longer do that. And you know what happened? He said a third of the students loved it, and they were critical thinkers. A third of the students didn't care. They just got their grade and went on. The other third of the students, where I call intellectuals, who actually started reporting to their superiors that this guy was actually making them look at both sides of theory, which is theory, and actually report on it, until the point that they came to him and said, "You've got to stop doing that." And basically, what would be the result? He would be removed from his work. So luckily, I'm not in that, because I'm not a physicist. I don't think I could get a degree in physics, because what I would want to write up my papers on, they wouldn't let me. But I really do thank you. It's really heartening to hear that from somebody. And you yourself, have you been a skeptic? How long?
Oh, forever, really. I never bought, even as a small kid, I was skeptical about the Big Bang Theory. It just never made sense to me.
Sure.
It breaks so many rules of physics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you
I was going to say that I
Go
don't.
ahead.
It would be good if you could keep politics out of science, but
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
reality is that you can't.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
that's such a sad state of affairs, where students are reporting their lecturers for making them think.
That's absurd.
The cognitive dissonance. What are they there at university for? They're there to get a qualification so that they can get a job. It's all driven by these kind of self-centered needs. There's no real concern for the bigger picture, the ethics of being a scientist, and the search for truth, and the dedication to that search for truth.
Yeah.
These are people who've been trained to think and repeat the information they've been programmed with.
Yes.
And when that doesn't work, they get really upset. They go into cognitive dissonance. Their whole world collapses, because they've been taught that what's key to success is getting the right answer, not understanding what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many examples of this. I'll give you one during my documentary film. I actually got a teacher when I was living in Long Beach, at the top high school, science high school, in Long Beach, California, and he let me come in, and I said, "Look, this movie is called Einstein Wrong, and I want to, ask the kids questions." And my mom was sort of the protagonist; she was the one going around, trying to learn all this. And basically, one of the questions was to the students, and most of them answered off camera, and that was, if you knew, for instance, for sure that Einstein was wrong or the Big Bang was wrong or something like that, would you, even though you know that, would you continue to teach otherwise to get your position in the university? 50% of high school students here in the United States would say they would forego truth to get their position.
That's
That's
very
that's
scary, isn't it?
that's high school. That's high school.
That's very scary, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the other things is my mentor, Dr. Riccardo Carzani. He has this very simple experiment to show how special relativity is wrong. And so he had two students who are grad students at very prestigious university. I think one was Carnegie Mellon, the other one was at Stanford or something like that. And the students went into their professors and say, "I've got this great experiment I want to do for my master's thesis," not even a doctoral master's thesis. And they said, "Well, what is it?" And the exact same story came across, the answer came the same from both of them back. And that was that when they asked their teacher, the teacher closed the door, said, "Please sit down." And then they looked across their desk to the student, says, "Do you want a career in physics?" And the students, both of these grad students, we know this because they told us the story, said, "Yes, of course I do." He says, "Then don't do this experiment." I mean, how can you even justify that? I mean, we should be teaching students to question everything.
Well, there's a lot of money in it, David.
Yeah,
There's big
that's
money,
true.
big research money, and
Yeah, yeah.
if you think about it, it's kind of like the medical system where they don't really have an interest in
Oh, healing
in
us.
in in curing anybody. They don't
Yeah,
they don't it's there's if they
yeah,
find an answer, then the money runs out.
yeah, yeah,
And the more kind of imaginary the thing that they're looking for, the bigger the research grants are needed, the bigger the accelerator they need. Um,
yeah.
and once they've got people convinced that there's something there, they can ride this train forever and
Oh,
just
yeah.
keep getting bigger and bigger funding budgets.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Um,
think, yeah, 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 yeah. One of the things that is in my documentary, and if you haven't seen it, let me know. Send me an email. I'll give you a free viewing of it for coming on this show here. But one of the really great things I have in the documentary is a study of called, I forget it's what's called, mischievous scientific behavior. They literally had an anonymous study done from researchers. And I don't remember what field it was, but it really doesn't matter. 3,000 researchers and scientists who wrote papers, had theses, and did experiments and looked at data. 1/3 of them, anonymously, 1/3 of them admitted to changing the data to fit their thesis so they could get more funding.
Well, this is another massive problem. Instead of people observing reality and thinking about that, looking for an anomalous behavior that current
Yeah,
theory doesn't explain, people are thinking about their career
yeah,
and the research grants. They set out with a conclusion and then go looking for the evidence for it.
yeah.
This is a complete opposite of the scientific method, really.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And many people pointed that out for sure.
But that would seem to be the way the majority of it is done these days.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it is. And in fact, one of the things that's really interesting, if you haven't seen my interviews with Dr. Alexander Unsker, he's one of the just amazing people. He's an actual physicist from Germany who's blowing the whistle on particle physics.
Yeah, I think he's doing some great work. He's again, he's had the courage to start the conversation and move the Overton window. He's been one
Absolutely.
of the very few people, even though maybe he doesn't have complete theories to replace things, but he's had the courage to start the conversation, and I think this is a huge step.
Well, yeah, and you were talking about replacing theories. One of the interesting things is I think one of my best works that I've done, it works in the sense of, I'm one of those people who think a lot about this stuff for many decades. But what some of the conclusions that I found, I was trying to figure out why we have right now so many really the brilliant people, the 10 more or less. We're guessing around 10,000 people who are professors, engineers, scientists, and just critical thinkers around the world who've really spent decades trying to come up with new answers. Well, one of my videos talks about that. We're in model revolution, as Kuhn says. Basically, you get to a point which we are today, where we have so much data that the way we're not going to necessarily get to the right answer until we come up with at least 4 or 5 or 6 or a dozen models, until one of them really starts to click. And I think one of the things is one of the things that I would say to people, especially on my channel, that I've learned, and maybe I can pass to people even like yourself, is that what I would say is that people aren't this idea that we have to replace what's there. It's almost like, well, here's a building standing. It's called science, and if we say relativity is wrong, it's all going to fall down, and that's impossible. We can't do that. Well, we can, and it's going to require us to come up with new models, and we're going to have 6 of them, very different, and fighting it out. But Kuhn talks about a cycle in which we get to model crisis, and the 20th century is all model crisis, and now we're to a point where we have, I would say, at least 3 or 4 maybe even more, very, very good theories that are almost wholesale replacements of a lot of stuff that we have. The only thing that stays around is Newton's laws, which are fine. But, I think this idea that if, you had mentioned that he's tearing this down, but he doesn't replace it. Well, we're in the replacement. We've had people working on this for decades. My father and I have been working on a model for, my goodness, now it's almost 5 years. It seems like just yesterday. We're not claiming that it's right. The way I look at it is our next model of the universe will be less wrong, hopefully, than the last one, because they're never right. And that's the problem.
Well,
we
there
think
can't be a perfect model, can there? There's
no.
Equations can only describe a certain amount of reality.
Sure.
Gödel's incompleteness theorem
Yeah.
proves that for any system of equations, there's always going to be something outside of it. And this is what I've come to thinking eventually, is that there'll always be another layer that we don't know about.
Sure. And
it's really about what engineering can we do with this model.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
What benefit is it to the rest of humanity? What things can we make with this to improve people's lives?
Right, and I remember 60 Minutes, which is a magazine here that's it's gone way politically to one end, unfortunately. But when they asked the physicists at the Large Hadron Collider 10 years ago, well, what good is this? Why are we spending $1 billion on this thing? You know what the guy said? Well, particle physics gave us the internet, didn't it? And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, that's not an answer. The answer is the machine you're building right now, how is that going to further science? And if it doesn't, then we have to say, well, maybe that's not the way to do science, and maybe that's the ethical part of science, which many of us who are outside the mainstream and in our organization talk about this constantly. I mean, if you are doing science, like the models we have, I'll give you the example of a model my father and I have. We have a level below the level that we have here, that we have a particle for light, magnetic field, electron. It's all the same. They all go the speed of c. Well, why aren't they the same particle? We have that. Well, below that, because we believe there's never the ultimate particle, in our model, the way it works in the Newtonian way, we know that there are particles below at a level of light, in this case gravity, which is also electricity, in magnetic fields, they all travel at the speed of light, that below that, for that system, this system above it to be supported, that there's a system below it of even smaller particles that go really fast. Now, if we know that, and if our model predicts that, and then we could actually engineer that, I did some calculations that we could, if our model's correct, and we could somehow technically get to that level, we can communicate to Mars in 1/4 of a second. Now, if you don't have any, right now the standard model has no physicality for light, no physicality for gravity. The model for the atom is just a mess. I mean, any models that come that are going to take the place of what's there, you're absolutely right. We have to be able to get something out of it. And that's one of the ways you can sort of prove a model. If our model says that this thing is there and it's in this way, and then someone goes out and looks at our model and says, well, maybe I should be able to find it this way. Next thing they know, they're communicating at c squared instead of c, the speed. Wow, that's pretty cool. And can that help us? Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, all of this stuff is tremendously frustrating. It's really frustrating to see that in reality, we started a university in 2018. It's online. There's nothing there yet, but the idea there is to have an online university where you have critical thinking. And so the object there is, if you want to come up with if you are a student, and if you were a student of my physics and you had an idea for a new model of the universe, go for it. Write your dissertation about it. The problem is we don't allow for that. We don't, when I've asked people during my movie, when I was filming, I said, what do you think happens when, for instance, Dr. Edward Dowdy, who's one of our members of our, he's a retired NASA engineer who's said basically, he's a doctor, I believe, Dr. Dowdy. He says that the only time you see light bending is in the corona of suns. And the only reason that is it's really refraction. It's not because of gravity. And then outside where relativity says it should be bending, it doesn't bend. Now, when I told people that on the street who just like science or just, not just regular people, they go, oh, well, you know what happens then? I said, what do you think is happening in the science world? You know what the average person will say back to you and me? They're going to say, oh, yeah, well, what happens is Dr. Dowdy's work will go to every university and they go, oh my gosh, there's a problem. We got to look at it. And we either have to change our theories or explain this. And when I tell them that could never happen, they don't believe me. But you and I know, because you've been a skeptic long enough, that Ed Dowdy's work has been around for a long time. Why aren't everybody in every university looking at it? Because the idea that you're supposed to look at a star that the sun should be bending its light and you're outside the corona and it's a perfect straight shot and in relativity predicts it should be over there. Why isn't anybody doing anything about it? The average person on the street doesn't believe me that the university won't do anything about it. That's what's crazy.
Well, as I said, there's a lot of vested interests financially. There's a lot of face saving. People are attached to their belief.
Yeah.
Their egos have connected to their belief. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in being right.
Yeah,
and the other thing
absolutely.
I was going to say is this, I don't know, maybe it's part of human nature, but a lot of people want a solid, clear answer to mysteries.
Yes, yeah.
A lot of people don't like the idea of not knowing.
Yeah.
They want a simple answer that they can put into a 20-second soundbite that explains everything so they don't have to think about it anymore. And I think for a lot of people, science has replaced religion.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's absolutely a religion because what happens is one of the things, a thesis I go over and over is that the reason the main big, I call them now, I just use this is easier terms, big science or big physics or big cosmology. The reason they like very complicated and mysterious things is because it sells. And not only does it sell, it makes them an expert. And then when they explain something to you and me that's completely paradoxical, that any person who was in a debate would get a failing degree or would lose the debate, they turn to you and I and say, well, you don't have a degree from MIT or from Oxford or from Cambridge, and therefore you don't understand what we're saying, even though that it's paradoxical what they're saying. And so that the mystery, the dark matter, the things that they can't find, the parallel universes, the universe is stranger than it's sort of the opposite of what you're saying. The reason they do that is the same reason that politicians who are screwing us over in whatever side they're on say to us, well, the problem of having a war with this country is way more complicated than just saying, no, we don't want to be there. We don't want to mess in their country. Let's just pull our troops out. This whole idea of people in power saying that things are more complicated, they're more mysterious, there's the dark
you
this.
You couldn't understand it.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Priests
have been doing this stuff for thousands of years.
Yeah. So yeah, if you say thou shalt not kill, but then you have to defend yourself, or you're killing, whatever if you give a paradox to religion, they will always say their answer is, well, God knows, and that's fine. I'm not criticizing religion. That's just a logical argument. But what's funny is science does the same thing. Well, we know, if you, even though, for instance, I'll give you a super paradox with special relativity, that are the laws of special relativity that Einstein laid down, which contradict each other. And there's only two. One is you can't go faster than the speed of light, or no, I'm sorry. One is that you have to measure the speed of light no matter what your relative velocity is to the source of the light. So if that one light's moving compared to me or you, we're all going to have to measure it. The second thing he says is that in all inertial frames, physics is the same. Now, if physics is the same in all inertial frames, and I'm on a train and I turn on a flashlight, you're on the ground watching me go by and the flashlight go by, and then you're in a different inertial frame, and your physics works the same as my physics works the same on the train. How is it that your time slows down and mine stays the same? Well, if that's not physics working the same.
There's heaps of contradictions in it.
Yes, it's just full of it, and that's just
isn't redefining distance in terms of the speed of light. Isn't that a self-referential definition?
Yeah, it's
units
circular.
of measurement are abstract things that were created for us by people to understand the world. They don't have any intrinsic properties or influence on the thing itself.
Yes,
and if you throw away standards of measurement, which is what Einstein does, what can you actually measure anymore?
Well, that's the whole thing.
Turns physics completely on its head.
Absolutely. What happens is, and one of the you've hit upon something again. Me being around a lot and hearing great people, because not all of these are my ideas; these are other people's ideas. One of the people in my film is he's a philosopher from Germany, and he says that the problem with relativity it's that it's about the observation of events, not the events themselves.
Yeah, this is another big problem, isn't it? When you start dealing with small things, the act of observation of it interferes with the thing itself.
Oh, and you want to get, and you just hit upon what is one of the greatest mysteries in all of physics. For those people who are watching, my subscribers who don't know this is one of the greatest. It's the double slit experiment. The double slit experiment is the idea. This is what they think is happening. It's not really happening this way, but this is what they think. They're going to send a photon or an electron through one slit or another slit. They're going to shoot it at the slits, and of course, some go through one, some go through the other. When they shoot it through a slit, the pattern behind the slit of this photons, for let's just make it light so you can see it, looks like an interference pattern, and people say, "Oh, it's a wave, it's wave. It's a wave through. It's a wave. Okay, that's fine." Then they put a detector that then says, "I want to see which slit the photon is going through." And so they put a detector next to it. They turn on the detector, and and here's what the conclusion, and this is why quantum mechanics is so screwed up, and it comes from this one experiment, is when they turn on the detector, the pattern behind the two slits looks now like that it's a particle, not a wave. So what they say is, instead of saying, first of all, instead of saying, this is what they should say, we don't know what light is, we don't know what this detector, how it's really detecting and how it interferes, we don't know not only what light is, how that interacts with, goes through space, all that kind of stuff. And that really what's going on, we have no idea. That's the real answer they should give. But what they say is,
how do these detectors work, and what is it that they're actually detecting?
Well,
do you know what a coincidence detector is? It's all statistics and probability. There's no definite causal link between a pair of photons.
Right, but what it comes down to is that the double slit experiment, if you have a model for light and you have a model for magnetic fields, and they're physical models. My father and I have a model for this, for instance. We didn't believe me, we didn't set out to do it. We just put together a lot of things. My father had, this sort of this whole epiphany kind of thing, and we started applying these ideas. Well, what it turns out is what's really happening is that if you use our model, for example, light is basically a bunches of particles being sent in waves together. That's why there's a particle wave duality. That's my father's, this is just in one model. Okay, I'm not telling everybody who's listening right now that this is the model that should be right or wrong. This is a model that I know. The only way we can explain any experiment like this is to have a model for everything in that experiment. So we need to know. So if there are waves of light particles going through, you turn on a detector, what it turns out in our model, that light, gravity, electricity, and magnetic fields all go at the speed of c. They're the same particle. So if you turn on a magnetic field to detect another, that's swirling particles that are going around, that's what a magnetic field is, and then you shoot a particle through it, it's going to affect it. Like you said, exactly what you just told me a few minutes ago. If you look at our model, and that's just one model, one new model, of course, what's happening is you're turning on a detector that isn't a standby observer that's not interfering. It's a magnetic field, for goodness sakes.
Part of the system, isn't it?
It's yeah. It'd be like saying I'm going to turn on electromagnetic. I'm going to shoot ball bearings through the slits. I'm going to turn on a magnet next to it to detect which which slit it's going through. And the ball bearing curves, and you know what the scientists today in physics will say to you, oh, that's weird. This detector that doesn't interfere with anything is making a curve. How could that be? I mean, it's in from that experiment you get into absurdities that today you have people in quantum mechanics literally going on lecture series and saying that the reason that a photon goes around one side of a star 10 billion years ago is because the only way that can happen is the collective of the consciousness of sentient beings all around the universe. No, these are people who are real physicists from real university.
I know. Who's that? Leonard Susskind and his holographic universe. It's just absolute madness. It's abandonment of truth and objectivity. It's just this
and
idea.
They stand up there.
Somehow reality is created by perception.
It's
the idea at the core of it, you know.
Can you yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's an absolute inversion of the search for truth that science is supposed to be about.
How can these people stand up there with a straight face and say these things? I mean, you have to really. It's amazing.
It's because they're part of a cult, David.
Yeah, they are. They are.
And they've been brainwashed with this stuff since they were small kids. They get rewarded for repeating it, and they have these big wank fests where they sit around and come up with all these fantastic imaginations, you know, and they all congratulate each other for being so imaginative. And it's a self-fulfilling cycle that keeps going on. And they've got so many people believing it that they're into the government for billions and billions of dollars a year, and they've taken over academia to the point where they're shutting out any real science or any sort of skepticism or objectivity. They're chasing the counting the angels on the head of a pin instead of looking at the anomalous behavior and trying to find new explanations outside the theory. Now, are you aware of the work of Rupert Sheldrake and his book Science Set Free? I think was in America. You heard of him?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Oh, you should. You really
send it that to me. Send that.
He does a TED talk. He did a TED talk that got banned.
I already like it.
yeah.
Holy cow!
He's a biologist. He came up with this morphic resonance fields idea. He's been around.
Oh, okay.
For quite a while, but he's done some research into the history of science and how some of these things that have become recognized as unquestionable truths came about, and that many of them are really not as solid as people think. One of the things he found out was that the speed of light has been observed to change.
Oh, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't done a video on, and I didn't.
What they've done in order to
Go ahead.
in order to have what they've done now, he went and talked to the professor of metrology about it, and the guy said, "Oh, you've discovered one of our dirty little secrets, but we've got around the problem by redefining the meter in terms of the speed of light." So now they can't tell if the speed of light changes because the meter's changing all the time.
I will tell you, speaking of the speed of light, there's a guy, can't remember his name right now, but he gave a talk at our conference here in Boca Raton at the University of Florida Atlantic University. It's a pretty big university here in Boca, about 35,000 students. We had him give a talk, and he spent and looked at statistically for the last 400 years, ever since the first true scientific measurements of the speed of light have gone on, that in fact he's finding out, and he found out statistically what I had thought when I first saw, when you've seen those charts where they show the speed of light being measured over 1600, 1700, 1800, that kind of thing. Well, it turns out that when you look at all of the measurements, you don't just look at the one. I was under the impression, like most of us would think, well, the speed of light has always been the same. It's just that we got more accurate, and it went in one direction. I mean, it got slower, but it wasn't as it got slower. We just got better at measuring it. It turns out that statistically, using real statistics and real significant digits, that in fact the speed of light has been changing over the 400 years statistically. Now there's something that actually could describe why that is, and that's the expansion tectonics theory, which I am a total believer in, because if you've ever read James Maxwell, expansion tectonics is absolutely, in my opinion, it's one of the it's got more facts behind it than almost any of the dissident kinds of theories. Now, if that happens and the Earth is expanding, in fact, the idea of measuring light, which is a physicality on the surface of the Earth, is going to change. And this whole idea is just counter everything, because once you get in the distant community, you realize that the word constant, there's no such thing. There's no, in fact, Glenn Borkert, who's one of the great scientists of our group, he's Mr. Infinity, we call him. When you think about these things, it's absolutely correct. There can be no two particles that are identical. Electrons are very similar, but they're never going to be identical. But if you think about the way we think about these things, that's not the way we think about it. When we think about constants, there's a constant, like G. That's another constant in gravity. It's an arbitrary number in an arbitrary system where we're trying to measure something and we gave it a number, right? I mean, you said something sort of similar to that too in the beginning about, measuring stuff, right? I mean, it's all arbitrary. It's really an arbitrary thing, this whole idea of constants. Oh, another thing I did want to say too that you brought, that you said that I remember too, is when I interviewed him, if anybody here watching wants to watch really great discussion between myself and Dr. Unziker, one of the things he said, it was shocking to me, but I'm not shocked by it. But he like you said, Axe, I'll call you Axe Man. Like you said, he is not afraid to tell what he really thinks. And when he met David so-and-so, in fact, it's a wonderful interview he did with the Nobel Physics laureate from the United States, who supposedly condensed the 19 variables, free form variables in physics down to one or two. He actually said that people like this guy who got the Nobel Prize are not even close to the best minds in physics. All the people who are the best minds in physics run away screaming from theoretical physics, because when they hear it, like you and I, they hear it with like critical ears and they're going, this is nuts. I don't want to be part of it. And that's why he actually comes out and says that the people who end up in particle physics and theoretical physics are not the cream of the crop. And I'll give you a perfect analogy, and this is going to be one of my videos in the future that I'm going to put together. Particle physicists and theoretical physicists are identical to corrupt politicians. The ones who get into the systems and go furthest, unfortunately, we're changing that hopefully today where we're getting back to public servants. We have that kind of movement here in the United States. But in general, still in the last 50 years, politicians are the ones who know how to play the dirty rules. They know how to usurp science. They know how, the rules, the laws. They know how to get around things. They are corrupt, but they're the ones who will play the game. They're the ones who will say, I will help my village get their clean water. And then when they get elected, they do nothing at all. And the reason they do that is because they learned to play the game. Well, the guy who got the Nobel Prize in physics, you would think this is how he got the answer. Dr. Unziker said to me, he said, when I asked him about it, I expected the answer of how he was, when he was young, he thought about the universe and what it was made of and what could it be, and he struggled all his life. You know what he said? And I'm going to paraphrase it. But I'll give you a super an analogy. He goes, well, I wanted to be a veterinary because I like doggies, but I decided to go into theoretical physics. I mean, that's the kind of answer he got. And we look at these people like Neil deGrasse Tyson. This guy, I remember one of my friends at work, I work in a group, again, they're pretty eggheads, they're pretty brilliant people in the area of computer science. And one guy, was following all this dissident stuff in my work with dissident science. And he goes, I looked up Neil deGrasse Tyson and he was a failed physicist. He couldn't go anywhere. And what did he decide to do? Become the mouthpiece for science. And when he was asked in my next video, you're going to see this, he was asked if Einstein could be wrong. You know what his first answer out of his mouth? Laughter. Now, if you are a person of science and you ask about any theory, could it be wrong? My answer is they're all wrong. They're just less wrong than the other one. That's all.
Well, that's it. There's models are constantly evolving, but there'll never be a complete answer to everything.
Yeah.
It's about what practical use can we find for this model? What observations does it explain, and what engineering does it enable?
Yeah.
And we've got to get back to this, I reckon.
Yeah. And here's a comment.
The other thing I was going to say is that there's more than a few academics in Jeffrey Epstein's little black book.
Yeah.
These people there's scientists are just like every other group of people.
Yeah.
They're prone to corruption, greed, ego, all the same issues that everybody else is.
Well,
we've been educated to think that somehow these people are above corruption, that they're these devoted to truth people, and that everything they say is unquestionable truth, just like priests.
Yeah. Here's somebody says, yes, getting rich in the process of helping failed science getting their funding. One answer watches the other. An interesting point with the funding is, this was a thesis that I came up with, and it's my own thesis. Some people even who are dissidents in my group actually disagree with this, but I think it's very true. When did the physicists all of a sudden get so much power that people throw billions of dollars toward them? There was one event that happened, and that was the explosion of the atomic bomb. Before that, physicists were just, eggheads doing, these things that no one paid attention to. The moment they made the atomic bomb, what happened is physicists became all powerful to the politicians. So what happened is, we're going to throw money at a particle accelerator. You think that Europe put all that money in the particle accelerator because they wanted to find the next fundamental thing in the universe and that was good for mankind? No. They wanted the power that comes with anything that maybe they'll find that the United States wouldn't find or somebody else wouldn't find. So the funding, I think that the real huge money behind these huge projects are coming from this impotence, and this is my own theory, from history, from this idea that if you're China and you see, they're building this collider, well, what if they came up with the Higgs particle and they found out that makes the atomic bomb look like nothing, and they hold that. So or maybe they come up with some type of energy thing that's going to launch them into space and they're going to colonize the world before we get there. If you look at why these physicists have all this money, it's that. There's not people aren't giving them money for pure research because politicians sit around who are corrupt thinking, well, I've always been curious about what's below the quarks, even though quarks were invented and are a figment of people's imagination as well. But what's that? They don't think that this money actually, in my opinion, came from the fact that once the atomic bomb was dropped, physicists became extremely important. Extremely important.
I think maybe at the point they're at now, they're just as much interested in keeping the gravy train going as anything else.
Sure. Hey,
And
yeah,
if they found anything, they'd just invent some other imaginary thing so that they could keep the money coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Richard Jess, he's one of the people in our group. You are there. I wanted to let you know we are here again. If you want to come in and talk like Axeman is doing, you can do so by going to. I'm going to be off of here probably. It's been almost 2 hours. I'm really happy this is working out. This new system is fantastic, by the way. It is a system you do have to pay for, but it's not that expensive. We use it for the CMPS, and it really allows. Where are you located in the world? I am a linguist, meaning I got a master's in linguistics. I'm going to try to guess. I think you're from Australia.
Yeah, mate.
I got it. All right. It's hard because people, unless you really pay attention, there's South Africa, New Zealand, Australia are pretty close. And then, of course, England's very different.
There's certain things in a New Zealand accent that differentiate them.
Yeah, you guys would know. I don't know that, but anyways, a lot of great, I will tell you, the Aussies, probably the most famous person of our generation alive today in science his name is Dr. James Maxwell. He wrote the most important book, in my opinion, in geology that exists. I've got one of the copies here. But regardless, he is from Australia. He's a geologist, just an amazing human being. There's a lot of great people outside the mainstream from Australia. They don't seem to be.
Walt Thornhill with the Electric Universe.
Sure.
Amazing things. And Stephen Carruthers.
Oh, yeah, Stephen Carruthers. We had somebody make a comment about that, I think, here. Stephen Carruthers is actually one of the things. Oops. Yeah, right there. He is actually on our website. I do want to show, if people don't know about our website, if you're sort of new to all this, we actually spent 1.5 years coming up with this new website called Science Woke. It is a fantastic website because it really, I see Darkness Falls is here. So let me show you this real quick because I did talk about it. Let's see, Chrome tab, Science Woke. Let me share that. And we're both still there, so you should be able to talk still. But anyways, Stephen Carruthers is on this. And basically, this is started out of how to become science woke. That is, if you didn't know science was all wrong and had all these problems, how do you get there? Well, you can start here. We'll tell you about people fighting big science. If you click on that, for instance, I love this graphic I made. Here's one of his grad students holding up at a university. Of course, I changed the sign myself. I can't challenge Einstein at a university, which is quite. Here are the stories, and one of those stories, in fact, is kicked out of the University of South Wales. And this is Stephen Carruthers' story about how he wanted to do his thesis on the black hole and how the current mathematics is all screwed up, which it is. And he literally got kicked out of the university for wanting to challenge, the black hole. It's just that's crazy. I mean, that's not the way it should work. But anyways, if you haven't been there and you're sort of new to the whole idea of becoming a critical thinker, it's sciencewoke.org. You can look at the new theories that people are proposing out there, the scientists that are there. Ron Hatch, the guy who just recently died, but these Dr. Cynthia Whitney, she is our head chief science officer at our organization. She got her degree in special relativity from MIT. The first application was a circular or spiral or circular lasers for guidance systems. She applied special relativity and she said she almost cried for a week because she found out that none of it worked. The special relativity didn't work. So here's a person from MIT, gets a degree in special relativity, applies it to a real world problem, and had to throw it out because it didn't work. There is your compatriot, Dr. James Maxlow. Absolutely great. This guy is really great too. He's a professor of radiology at Ohio State University. He has a very different, yeah,
He's a genius.
yeah, and we have Dr. Holden Arp is there. This guy is amazing. He's got his own ether theory, and he's a retired Supreme Court justice. No lie. Here, and that's just to show people you don't have to get a degree to change the world. There's Ron Hatch, who just passed away last week. It's so sad. There's of course, Wall Thornhill. You talked about Dr. Edward Dowdy, who
There's a spelling mistake there. I just noticed, David. You spelt Wall's name wrong. You've got the wrong way around.
Thank you very much. Thornhill. Oh boy, sorry about that.
Do you know about Discord?
No.
Oh, Discord's like. Do you know what IRC is?
No.
Internet Relay Chat.
No.
Discord started for gamers to talk to each other while they're playing online games.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
It's a chat app that you can also run in a browser.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Some of the people that run YouTube channels and a lot of people that run YouTube channels also have Discord servers where people can meet and talk and post information to each other. It might be worthwhile setting one up.
Yeah, it could be. Very well. That's absolutely something we can do. But anyways, I just wanted to show people this. It's got great people. Eric Reeder, who does experiments with, there's Dr. Edward Dowdy, who shows that general relativity doesn't work. This guy's amazing. Dr. Gerald Pollack, he wants to help start a university. He showed a fourth phase of
easy water is amazing.
It's a fourth phase of water. It's the reason why you see this lip of water where you can float a coin on water. It's because the water molecules form hexagonal sheets, and they can show that. And you know what? People, when he first came out with, thought he was nuts. I mean, how could you not be nuts about that? I mean, that's ridiculous. Anyways, there's on and on and on. I just wanted to show everybody that. Let me get that away now. But I think we have
attitude that science is complete. You know.
Yeah.
That we know everything already. But people that actually know about the subject know that there's so much that can't be explained.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, the ability of maths to completely apprehend reality is limited, and then we can't, even if we had the complete maths, we can't actually do the maths because continuous equations can't be completely processed in computers.
Sure. What we try to do is just try to make better models that are not as bad as the last ones, and if we get that through our head,
more engineering.
Absolutely. I do have V Darkness Falls. I'm going to try to put them up here, and hopefully the person's a decent person. If not, I have control of it all. But V Darkness Falls, I'm bringing you online. Do you have a mic there?
Yes, I do.
Hey, I'm pleased to meet you, and thanks for coming on.
Hey. I am indeed a decent person.
Okay.
See, here's the thing. Science doesn't want us to have the information for gravity. They don't want us building these things from the ground up in our garages like a hot rod. Okay. Have you ever seen a ferrocell? Do you know what it does?
I think I've heard of it. Yeah. And I've been involved with people who are working on 0-point energy and things like that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You can make your own at home and stick a magnet underneath it, but all toroidal basically what it is it's two sheets of glass with special ferrofluid with special ferrofluid in between, and it's got LED lights around it.
Who makes that? There's a guy who makes that.
Yes, recently, within the last 5 years, yes. And
what's his name? He's got his whole website. He's got a whole following on YouTube.
Yeah, he does. And there's a guy named Ken Wheeler who has been studying magnetism. He follows Faraday, Tesla, Maxwell. And what he does is he puts magnets underneath there, all toroidal magnets. What happens is the LED lights get swept up in the field lines of a magnet. It's basically an X-ray for a magnet. All toroidal magnets have, what it does is it swirls to the center. And all toroidal magnets have void centers where light cannot go. Basically, it looks just like the image of the black hole that NASA supposedly got.
Sure,
5 months ago. Okay. Now it's an hourglass shape. It goes down to the center. You flip it over. It does the exact same thing. So if you put a magnet up on its side view, it looks exactly like a galaxy with the plasma jets and the hourglass figures.
Sure.
It looks exactly the same. But science doesn't want us to have this kind of technology. They don't want us build. I guarantee you, if you look at the pyramids, I will bet you any money if you rip off the corners of those pyramids, especially Giza, since it's generating heat in the center of it, I guarantee you, if you rip off and peel off the corners of that pyramid, there's going to be magnets running all the way up the corners of those pyramids.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a, it could be. I can't say that's true. I think what's more interesting is, have you ever seen the underwater experiments by Yonel Denou?
I have not.
Yonel, I'll get you. I'll show you those. Yonel Denou is a scientist, physicist from Romania, and he did the most simple experiments in his daughter's pool, and he shows that flowing fluids act exactly like magnets. So magnets, in his model, magnets are the magnetic fields are the flow of ether around magnet of the metals.
Yeah.
In our model, we don't have ether, but they are flowing. The same particles that are electrons, light, and gravity, they also flow. So that if let me look him up. In one of I think the more interesting question is here it is. I'll put it up on the screen for us. But the most interesting question is, what is magnetism? Because like Axeman was saying, if we know what these things are, we can start manipulate them in ways that are really important. So let me add this up here.
But science doesn't want us to do that, because like I said, if we could build quote unquote UFOs from the ground up in our garages like hot rods, we are free from under these elites' thumbs. We can leave this planet and not come back. Who are they going to loan money out to at a high interest rate then?
Well, I think, again, I see what you're saying, but I think what we need to do is understand these technologies. I think if we try to make a leap between not knowing how the universe works and leaping to some type of technology that's way beyond what we know. So here, let's take a look at this. This is really interesting. These are just basically two motors with tubes, and they're in water, so it's like frictionless. And when they go in opposite directions, they attract. What's happening is that makes the flow of water around them when they're opposite. He has them turned off now. When he turns them on, going in opposite directions, here it goes, they will attract. And then this is in the same direction, they will also then repel. No, okay, so if they're retracting, he'll be doing it in the same directions. So what this means is a physical model for magnetism would be a flowing of particles, because we know that fields are really made of particles, and that the attraction is flowing of particles that are in opposite directions, and then if they're in opposite directions, those travel. The flows meet together in the same direction. Now, what he's going to do now is up at the top, he's going to switch the direction, and now you're going to see them repel. So what happens is he is demonstrating that magnetism could easily be described physically as flowing particles that, so he's going to now try to put them together. They're now going in the same direction. And so that the water is going in the same direction around each one of them, and that causes repulsion. Now, he has another one I'm going to go to that's even more dramatic, and that's this one here. This is where one of the things about our model, my father and I model, this was a eureka moment when I saw this. Now, these are two magnets, and he's showing you how they work. Now, he's going to give a model of this spinning fluid that would be the magnet. What he's saying is that magnetism is caused by something, he calls it ether, that's flowing around them that causes repulsion and attraction. It's not a magical thing. It's not a mathematical thing.
But it's technically just dielectric acceleration. That's what causes the pull and push.
But what he is saying, that's what you're saying. But what he's saying is these are, now he's got two cylinders that are going round and round underneath in the water that causes a circulation around them. And when they are, depending on which direction they are compared to each other, you get the exact same reactions of attraction and repulsion and chaos that you have. So he's showing you the direction of the spin of those using the right hand rule. So what this
Yeah.
is doing is giving us a real physical possibility of what magnetism really is. Now, whether it's like ether, or whether it's a particle model like our model, or whether it's a lattice theory model, but regardless of what it is, now let's see if I can move ahead of it and show you
Easy.
what happens. Here they are moving in opposite directions, and they attract. Experiment 2. Okay. What's happened is now he's got him going in the same direction. You can see there's conflict there, and
Mm-hmm.
then eventually they will come together, and they show the exact same hanging those things, and what he's doing show very similar to the
Do
similar.
you
So
have this is why the ferrocell, this is why it's so important that I really want you to take a look at the ferrocell. I emailed you a few links of it. When they
yeah,
put two magnets together underneath the ferrocell, you can literally see attraction happening. You can see it looks like hairs reaching out and just attaching each other. The vortex to vortex. It's
I
perfect.
understand. I understand.
Now,
And then
what
what
brought
I
me to you,
yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead. What I'm saying is, I think that's all interesting in seeing the patterns. In fact, here's an interesting one. If you take a battery, if you take small compasses, my father and I, who are working on our model, you take a battery or just a double A battery, or you take a magnet and you put those little compasses around them. A battery has the same, very similar field to a magnet. Now,
Mhm.
what you're saying, what I would sort of redirect what you're saying is like, we need to find out what that is. The patterns of them are very interesting. But
There is somebody who has found out what it is, and he's written 4 books on it, and he gives them out for free, and he's got thousands and thousands and thousands of PDF downloads. His name is Ken Wheeler.
I know Ken. I know Ken.
Yeah, what led me to you, and what led me to Wall and the electric universe theory was I don't come from the scientific field. I actually come from I don't know if you believe in the whole UFO field, but that's where I come from. And
Sure.
where I started investigating was Linda Moulton Howe has a piece of metal that was sent to her in 1996 by a very old man on his deathbed who was involved in a cleanup of a crashed object in 1940s. And the bottom of the craft glowed for 3 hours. Okay. He waited until it stopped glowing. He broke a bunch of pieces off and he put them in his pocket. Long story short, on his deathbed, he sent them to Art Bell. Art Bell gave some to Linda Moulton Howe. Right.
Sure.
Anyways, long story short, what she discovered upon analyzing this metal was that it was micron layered magnesium, bismuth, and zinc, and its ion levels were 60% higher than they should be. And she also discovered that they were subjected to terahertz frequencies. Now, I found an experiment with a homemade ham radio where a guy turns stainless steel rods from the antenna into instant plasma. He bypassed the liquid stage of metal and turned it straight to plasma because the high frequency radio waves were too much for the antenna to handle. And the stainless steel rods turned to plasma. So you remember that Tesla plasma ball experiment? If you do that exact same experiment using something even higher frequency, like terahertz frequencies, and you use stuff like magnesium, bismuth, and zinc, you're not going to get a magnetic field. You're going to get a diamagnetic field. And I started investigating into Bob Lazar's case and element 115, unimpentium, which was renamed to moscovium. They used that to make element 113, nihonium, by smashing particles of zinc and bismuth together. Diamagnetic materials.
I understand, and what I would say to this, because we've had several conferences with the Tesla Tech group, and you have a lot of what I call tinkers there, and I don't say that in a bad way, because people come to science, and that science today, the standard model, has problems from very different angles, right? One of the angles people come from is doing experiments and doing things that they don't understand. I have one guy who's actually a really brilliant, very young guy who worked with Brown's gas. I don't know if you're familiar with Brown's gas, but basically it's a gas that will burn through tungsten, and you can put your finger on it through it. Now, why? That's just not, that goes against everything you know. In fact, when he was in college and university, he was asking every chemistry teacher and physics teacher to explain it. No one could. Then he came to our group. What we need to do with all the things that you are talking about is to go back to the same thing we need to all do, and that is, let's build a model. Let's try to understand models for that. What you're talking about is a lot of things that are going on.
The anomalies. Focus on the unexplained behavior.
Right, but we need to have a model for it. The problem is we can sit there and do experiments till we're blue in the face. We sit there and we tell people what we think is going on when we don't even have a model for the atom. That's very good.
You don't necessarily need a model. You can still experiment on the anomaly without a model. Look at what the Sapphire Project are doing. They don't have a model, but they've broken the current models.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that for people to take these...
One of the things that I find most fascinating
I'm sorry.
with the Sapphire Project is this transmutation and these strange structures that they're getting on the surface of the anode where the transmutation's occurring. That the anode came out green. You would have seen the latest video. This completely breaks all current known physics. They've got hard proof of low energy fusion going on there.
Sure, but let me again, Axeman. Let me say this again. When you go, because we've had people in our group that are nuclear engineers, people who deal with this kind of stuff in a practical way every day. And what these people are saying, and those people have said to, and I know what you're saying, but what they say is, until we get a better model of the basics of what's going on, just the basics, what we're going to do is just going to be guessing and guessing, and we're going to use experimentation just like they did in the Amazon rainforest to find out, oh, this guy eats this berry and dies, the other guy eats this other berry and his headaches go away. We don't, we've got to have, the only way we're going to get to the point where we can do the things that we would like to do, that we think UFOs would do, is to try to get a handle, at least try to model it in some way. And
I agree. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but the problem is, go ahead, Axeman.
Isn't that a bit like saying we can't build buildings because we don't understand how gravity works?
No, because we understand that we have equations that actually do explain gravity, that we do know. But we don't. It's not.
The phase of the Sapphire Project is to try and quantify how much energy they're getting out of the thing.
Right, but again, if we look at it,
if they can come up with some simple formula that can predict how much energy they're going to get out of it.
Sure. I agree.
Does that mean they, even though they don't have a model for how it happens, it's still predictable enough to do engineering with?
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree with that.
And I completely agree. But here's the problem: we are never going to be able to go back to the drawing board because we can't get funding. Some of us have the knowledge, but we cannot get funding. If we go to any college who worked for the government, we can't get funding. We will, if we go against the Einsteinian theory, we will not get funding. They want jet propulsion. They want rocket propulsion because that's what they make money on. It won't be until that's gone that they start looking at other sources of propulsion. Okay, it's illegal. If you go to invent help, it's illegal to form clean energy, 0 point energy. The government will not let them do it.
Sure, because the people, it's money involved for sure.
It's money involved. They will they will not let us go back to the drawing board. We won't be able to get funding, and that's why a lot of us are broke nowadays. It's because some of us now do have knowledge. Well, now that we have knowledge, they need to take the money away, so we cannot study. And here's the crazy thing. We know that humans have small amounts of cryptochromes in our eyes. Okay, if you buy $1,000 neodymium magnet and study under it under a ferrocell for a few hours, your eyes will physically hurt. They will literally hurt because the cryptochromes, the small amount, trace amounts that are in our eyes, birds have that. It's how they navigate north and south for the winter. Ken Wheeler found that they don't see magnetism. That's just crazy. Light is what they see. When they go north, they see red. When they go south, they see blue. Is it possible thousands and thousands of years ago that we used to have the same thing because we used to be migratory creature? Is that why the pyramids are so perfectly placed on magnetic field lines? Is because we used to have that same ability but devolved over time. It's possible because we still have small trace amounts of cryptochromes in our eyes.
Well, you know, I think all those things are very interesting, but I think I guess the way I would put it is this. When you get into, for instance, if you look at the electric universe, I support them 100% because
Me
anybody
too.
anybody who's out there going against the mainstream and trying different things, I am
Can't
all
get funding.
supporting. But one of the things we do have to be careful is the human brain is made of neural networks. I know because we can simulate them, and I know how we simulate. I know how they work because in computer science we can do that. The problem with neural networks is we can see patterns in almost everything. And so what I've been trying to say is, look, folks, before we go really far with a lot of these analogies of this is really what happens or the pyramids are this, let's just tell the world we don't know what light, gravity, and really how atomic structure really works. Because if we don't know what light is, how do we know how the photoelectric effect works? We call things energy. Energy is a concept that is not real. We know that. So what I'm saying is, before we go to, how do you say, yes, we can skip all the theoretical stuff. Well, if we can, in the same time, go to the same port, you know, at least say to ourselves, okay, let's start admitting we don't know what gravity is, what light is, what magnetism is, how this interacts with atoms, how this works. And even though we can do experiments, we do need to do that. And we have people doing that now. And I think we can do that in parallel, absolutely, because that's part of it, Axeman. I wanted to sort of bring this all around before I think I'm going to stop here at 10:30 on my time. But basically what I think needs to happen is we do this in parallel. And that what we're going to find out is that we are absolutely in model revolution, that the more we do experimentally, the tinkerers or the people who are doing these experiments like the Sapphire experiment, they're going to give us more data points for the new models that we have to explain those things. And we do have, I will tell you, we have at least 3 or 4 good enough models that we can really start to say, do these models match up with what we're seeing with the new tinkers out there, with the guy we were talking, Darkness Falls. Let me put you back up there. He fell. But, you know, I think he's muted. Darkness Falls, you're muted there. But anyways, I think we have to do it in parallel. The idea that we can just plow ahead just by, you know, doing this is eventually we're going to falter. So what I'm saying from my end that I know with the people we hang out with in the CMPS and the people I've known for over 20 years doing this great work, we're well on our way. And one of the things I want to do is get people like who are the ones looking at magnetism and finding these great ways to visualize it. What we want to do as theoreticians ourselves, the new ones, like with the particle model, we have a model that uses the Denew effect. I sort of coined that word, the Denew effect. And we in our model should be explained everything Ken Wheeler and all these things, V darkness that you're seeing and you're talking about magnetically, all those things, our model, my guess, can explain. So if we have a model that can explain it, and our model then gives you guys something extra, like, by the way, there's a G2 particle that travels at the speed of c squared, and that's at this level, can we get at it? The tinkers could get at it. That's where you have theoretical models helping you get to a next step that you may never find.
Yeah. Ken Wheeler, he's very rough around the edges, but he makes a lot of very good points, and he is indeed being demonetized. A lot of his videos, I don't know if you've seen his videos, but have you seen his video with the magnetic putty and the toroidal magnet?
Yes, I have seen him. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's and Saturn in the same video how the dielectric inertia planes line up perfect with the rings and the planet?
Yes.
Unreal.
Yes.
Unreal.
Yeah. I've had some arguments with him. The only arguments I have with him is I tell him, I said, just be careful. And this is where trying to hook yourself to at least some model. There's Jeff E. has a great model. Glenn Borker has a really good model. There's a couple other people who have a good model. We have a particle model that's very good too. All these models are out there. What I'm saying is that happens with Ken Wheeler is they come up with this vocabulary in this world and this stuff. It almost takes a life of its own without really physicality. They're explaining phenomena.
It's true, but that vocabulary existed already with Faraday and Maxwell and Tesla. He's just explaining.
That's true. But no. Be careful.
Yeah. Okay.
I love his work. I'm no poo-pooing. I give him 100 out of 100 for what he's doing. But be careful. He's not explaining it. What he's doing is he's giving a vocabulary. He's showing it. He's giving explanations in systems for it, but they're not based on a real physicality model because we don't have one. And so what I'm saying to you guys, and what I say to him, I says, look, continue what you're doing, but take a look at a model, jump on one of them at least, and say, okay, this is the physicality, because the average person's going to go to Ken Wheeler, listen to all the vocabulary, and go, oh, that's just a Harry Potter world they've invented, regardless of whether or not what they're seeing is true. But Ken Wheeler's explanation for it without a physical model could be wrong in the sense of the way it's being explained, not with what he finds.
It could be, but here's the problem: mainstream science won't look at it, and science classes today they still explain magnetic fields with lead shavings, a piece of paper, and a magnet underneath. They will not look at the new technologies. They still study magnets with Gauss meters. Ken is right about that. Science is ignoring it on purpose because. Think about this. If once the Einstein theory is dismantled, do you know how many colleges have to be dismantled? How many physics professors need to be thrown out? Because one, they know nothing about magnets, and two, they know nothing about electricity. So much firing needs to be done through universities throughout the world.
Yeah, but let me just give you a little bit of realism on that part. I understand what you're saying. It's true to a certain point. I had my mother in the film. It's part of my documentary film. If you haven't seen EinsteinWrong.com, go there. It's a great film. I gave her 50 universities to call up, and to talk to any expert in and relativity. Almost every university, there was no person that was expert in relativity anymore because it doesn't give you any money. It doesn't add up to anything. So when we see the picture that's being painted by the media about Einstein and how important he is, and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku,
mouthpieces.
Yeah, and when you see that, the average person thinks, "Oh, well, Einstein's being taught everywhere." In the high school, the advanced people, these people are going to MIT, Harvey Mudd, Caltech. These people are going there. These students, they skip the entire chapter on relativity. They didn't even study it. So that what is being sold to the public and what we think would be a dismantling wouldn't. I have now gotten people who had told me for sure that they have had physics professors that have gone in front of the class and said, I am now going to teach you quantum mechanics, but I do not believe in it, but I'm required to teach it to you. They're now saying it. The cracks are appearing. So and it was because of the work that Ken is doing, that everyone here, the number of people is growing. I mean, my channel, I haven't put out a video for over a month because I've been busy. My channel continues to grow. It's the predictions in this, and it's not because I'm a great person.
You're being demonetized, I guarantee it.
I wasn't monetizing myself until a month ago.
I understand that, but the algorithms of the chance of people seeing your videos, seeing Ken videos go down. The reason why science is in question is because of YouTube. And that is why Google bought YouTube, to try to shut down people like you, people like Ken, and all the truth tellers that are out there, because they don't want this information getting out that they are wrong. Well, and that's why they push Neil deGrasse Tyson and Hawking and Michio Kaku so hard on today's youth.
That's why they put flat Earth out there as well.
Well, flat Earth is a joke. They know. Yes. I mean,
to confuse people.
Well, let me tell you, I do have an
It's not a
inside
joke,
info.
David. It's
No,
a
no, no.
psychological operation.
Axe is right. Axe
Wait,
is right.
let me tell you, it isn't the big science that's doing it. I was being considered for an interview by the people who knew the people who started that, and it turns out to be more like a crop circle than it is a devious thing by the big science. What it is
Not
that
big science, it's the government, mate.
well, it's not even
Yeah.
the government. No, the people
No,
who
it's Cass Sunstein's cognitive infiltration.
well, but Axeman, let me just tell you what I know. Okay, I can't name names, but what I'm saying is that I know people who knew the people who started this, and these people are not from the government. These people are not high up and using this for that. They conveniently how do you say, use it for letting the confusion happen, just like Area 51 by the government, because I've worked on top secret projects, because I've been in computer science. Again, I can't say what it was, but I do know for a fact that what happens is that when they do these kinds of experiments, someone sees something fall down with the glowing whatever. It's a black ops kind of thing that the government is trying to do. They don't want anybody to know about it. They love the idea that people think it's a UFO and all that, because they want confusion. What I'm saying is, what we have to understand is, and I think it's important for everyone to understand, at least in my opinion, we're not fighting against a giant man that's this coordinated effort. It's more chaos on the side of science, because it's not as big. And as for the demonetization that's happening across the board, Google and even politicians, at least here in the United States, it all comes down to money and eyeballs. What happens is,
naive to think that powerful people don't work together to maintain their power.
no, they do. But
deep
I'm
state.
saying,
Deep
I
state.
absolutely agree with that. You know who my candidate here in the United States is? If I know it's politics, is Tulsi Gabbard, because she is going against the war machine.
Yes.
That thing is huge, and that's why I support her. Well, again, what I'm saying though is on the science side, knowing the people and being closer and closer to the people, and even knowing the people who started the flat Earth thing. What happens at that point is.
Now, what do you mean by started the flat Earth thing?
Okay, do you remember crop circles? Remember crop circles?
Yeah.
That came from a people like a Monty Python group of college kids in the UK who decided they were going to perpetrate this grand hoax and see how far they could get with it. That's how it ran. Now, this is the same thing that's happened with the flat Earth. That's exactly the same thing. Because the people I knew, what happened was a YouTube channel that has a lot more followers than I do was looking to interview me, and they said that they interviewed the people who started this whole thing, and that was the same. That was what they were trying to do. They were trying to perpetrate something. Let's take something really crazy and try to make this thing get legs, knowing that it's absolutely not true, and see how far we can get. Now, it doesn't mean that big science loves that or politicians love it, because the politicians here love the idea that if you are a creationist, which I have many friends who, even though I'm not religious, and we in our group we have people in our
motivation. What would somebody's motivation be to do something like that?
I have it right here.
Of course.
How would they get access to channels to distribute the idea?
Well, they don't need it, because what happens, they know it's viral. Things that go viral are the idea, not necessarily implementation of it. So what happens is, I have friends.
The majority of flat people that are into this flat Earth nonsense really came to it through Jaron and Bob Nodell and these people on YouTube.
Sure.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Once people start,
people that you claim started it, because
I'm not saying they started it. What happened?
Their ideas from originally.
Here's what happens. It's sort of like the Life of Brian. If you've seen the Mighty Python,
to me.
Yeah, if you see the Life of Brian Mighty Python, what happens is the guy stands up where all the other preachers are, starts talking, and people follow him. That's what's happening. It's just group psychology. And that's one of the things the people who started this group was doing it for. They're going to see if we can actually start it, and people are going to believe this stuff.
Maybe they're not being entirely honest with you about their reasons for doing so.
Well,
It could be, but I don't think so. I just think, and I wanted, before we go, I just want to wrap up with one idea that this sort of pulls this all together, because I am always open to that. I can be wrong, absolutely, but this is what at least I've known from talking to people close. But what's really important is our group, the CMPS, has people who are of every religion, of every ethnic background, from people who have PhDs in relativity at MIT to ex-Supreme Court justices. The difference is that when we all get together, we talk science, and what we say is, I don't care if you think the Earth's 10,000 years old, if you believe in the Big Bang, if you don't. What happens is we only talk about the science. And so I have many friends who believe the Earth's 10,000 years old, but they don't get up at our conferences and talk about that. We talk about what the atom is made out of. We talk about what possibly the electron is really like. We talk about what gravity really could be. And we talk with people who are the Tesla tech people who are doing things in their garages. But what we need to understand is, the more we worry and we fight about this, the big guy and all that stuff, which is true. I mean, I know that the war machine is real. Now, all I can tell you is, from being around this since the early 1990s and talking with people from very inside of science, that it's there, but the big machine that's going against us, the only real big machine going against us monetarily, is these countries who put lots of money to try to get the next big powerful thing. And yes, the companies who are energy companies will put people down who are trying to come up with better energy ways, but they're doing that with solar eventually. But it's not something that is, based on this, where they've got these scientists sitting around doing these things. It's really driven by people with money who could care less about what's actually going on technologically.
And that's a very good point. If I can get one last thing in before we go off,
absolutely, go ahead.
Let's just cut to the crap. I mean, deep state is just a watered down, better version of the word Illuminati and secret society. Okay, our government has this zero-point energy, this UFO technology, but let's cut the crap here. The only reason why it's not in our everyday military arsenal is because our government's full of traitors, and they know that those schematics will get sold to the Russians, to the Chinese. Imagine if they can put that technology on a rocket and it can circle the globe an unlimited amount of times without needing to stop. Okay, they don't want this technology out because our government is infiltrated with a lot of traitors, and that is another reason why they're going to keep it under wraps.
Well, I mean, I think that's a theory, and it could be very possible. But I'm more to the in my own opinion, just sort of wrap it up, and I respect yours, and it could be totally right. But I'm more of the opinion that human beings and society, even the people what we call the deep state, works much more in chaos. The people, I know, again, I can't say much, but I do know people in these areas, and basically, I have been told by that the CIA, the FBI, from people, it's one person doesn't trust the next person, so it's more chaos than it is organized. And so what happened is
what goes on is just kicking the can down the road. Well,
what it happens is you get in, you learn your rules. The guy next to you, even in the CIA, could be the triple person against you, and so it's just chaos among chaos. And that's why when you see these things work themselves into the mainstream media, and you see these CIA and FBI people get on camera, and you think these are not talking to each other. They're not, because no one trusts anybody, and it's just,
well, if you build your house on sand,
eventually
and all the inherent corruption and lies and deception that has to go on within these systems of power for them to maintain themselves are eventually going to destroy them.
And that's another reason for this whole
at the moment is this just desperate jumping from one thing to another to deal with the crisis as as things get exposed.
Yeah.
Just like flat Earth, and that's exactly the reason. That's exactly the reason why flat Earth has been pushed into our. We hear it every day, and the reason why that happens is because when we go to pages like David's here, and if some of us starts to speak the truth and getting the attention of others, well, in between that truth is the Earth is flat. Earth is flat,
Of course.
and those people think, oh my God, everybody in this comment section is crazy. All
It's
these
been
people are
used.
nonsense.
With that Jason Morantz guy from the new
Well, again, I agree with you what you guys are saying, but
Flat Earth about 10 times.
yeah, but yeah.
In his attempt to discredit anybody that questioned any.
So we all look crazy in the comment section. All of us do.
Right. I agree with you, V Darkness. I agree with you 100% that it's being used. It's being used to bring us down to
the science. I'd also agree with David that it's. I don't know how productive it is to get into this and talk about the science rather than the politics. I know that the two things are intimately connected, and it's really hard to.
And they're paid to do this. Some of them are paid to do this. We know Hillary paid people to go online. We know that some people are paid to spread disinformation and
of course,
crap like
absolutely. Absolutely. There's, I mean, the organization that said that the Russians were infiltrating, which is not true. But they were caught making fake Russian bots to then charge for people to get rid of.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Yes.
I mean, and the flat Earth, what started out as a university prank to see how far the psychology was hijacked by the people on the left who wanted to, on the right. I'm not here to talk politics one way or the other.
I understand.
But they are hijacking it because then they can make it sound like all my friends who are creationists don't believe in science. That's not true. Some of the best scientists I know are creationists, but it doesn't mean they're not out there saying we have to teach that the Earth's 10,000 years old. They're still saying to me like the same thing, Dave, we don't care we can't even tell you what light is. Let's get that one right.
And here's the thing, science, we may not like the fact that grass is green, but science tells us that it is. Okay. And science may not give us the answers that we want.
Right.
It might go against creationalism, but
yeah, that's okay. But the thing is, at least everyone should have a seat at the table if they're talking science. That's the way it should be. I will leave it here before we go off. Stefan, the gravitational waves, we can talk about that. So I really think this turned out great. I just did it on a whim, even though I'm still working on my own videos for my channel.
Well, great job. Keep it up.
I'll be here next week for everybody. I want to thank very much V Darkness and Axeman. You guys were absolutely great, and everybody else who came on here through the chat. I do watch them. I'll be here next week if everything works out. I think this platform is really good. Allows for people anywhere in the world to join in, and everyone who's going out there trying to get truth in science, speaking truth to power in science, I applaud you. It's not important necessarily the exact thing. I am a person that if you want to prove the Earth is flat, if a student came to mine and said, I want to prove the Earth is flat, I said, go for it, because they will learn from it. They're wrong or they're right. But the moment we tell people they can't even do that, that's crazy. So anyways, thank you so much.
I just want to tell you, thank you. Thank you for thank you for everything that you're doing, and don't stop. We know that your YouTube channel is probably very low in the algorithms. It's not going to show up on people's recommended list.
But it's growing. It's growing.
Keep going.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And keep, let's talk some more, because I like this interaction has been really great. In fact, I found out from the comments here was, I'm so glad Axeman and V Darkness got on. It got much more interesting than me bobbling by myself. So
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Have
a good night.
Have a night. Good night. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Axeman.
Yeah, no worries.
Bye.
Hey.